Oh no. Well, if you've clicked on this video, it's because the internet is ablaze. Conformity gate. It is a lie. But, dear fellow Spuds, I want to take this time to, reinforce. I want us to remember why we loved this show and why it kind of went wrong. The simple thing is, it changed. It became something new every season. And the showrunners, they never locked anything down. And if you really watch each season, you can tell that they kind of switched the narrative constantly, always redefining their own lore, redeciding what this season would be about. And of course, they had lots of developmental nightmare by just the show having only 5 seasons, but 10 years. They were just stalled. And really, what we needed was 4 or 5 seasons all back to back. Most likely the show could have been finished in 4 seasons, as long as they would have just had them come out one every year, even with maybe a little bit longer than a year. But all of the actors would have still been children. All of the actors would have been able to stay within their personalities. And I think what's happened is especially the actors are either just unfamiliar with the character they originally had, or they did the best they could with a character that was wrote in a way that wasn't wrote originally, because the writers, the showrunners, changed how they want the characters to act. So my thought, my DM brain feels like, look, we know everything now. The Duffer Brothers did not know everything then, but they knew some stuff. The reason we love the show is because littered along each of the seasons, they had some really cool ideals, really good filming, cinematography, great acting, and it just unfortunately didn't pan out for season 5. And I think everyone is hurting. Everyone is looking for a reason. And I think it simply is just the showrunners were done. They were stuck in a long process trying to appease everyone, and they just didn't have the passion anymore, or at least they don't have what I would call the gumption to get themselves out of the hole that they dug themselves in. I really think that they just didn't know how to keep going, and I think 10 years, they're just not the same people they were. In the story that they originally told, they were cannibalizing because they needed to justify some of these new elements they were bringing in, and then I think they had their own sluggish feelings that some of the lore they were getting old with. They wanted to change stuff up, but then after they changed stuff up, they realized they were making plot holes. And so they just kept sweeping stuff under the rug, and getting along the way some coincidences that people were finding and going, wait a minute, how did this is, you gotta be doing this on purpose. As a DM myself, you have this multiple times. I don't know how many times you're playing and you have worked really hard on a storyline, but sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees. You got something going on. You really have a lot of things like concept, but you don't have anything really locked in. And then you get to the conclusion or way down the line, and your players, if they're really into the story and they've really been keeping notes and they're really trying to figure out what you've been trying to give them, and they're giving you the benefit of the doubt, and they're like, man, this DM is really good. And then they've made all of these connections, which literally could just be you making mistakes, but just so happens they're happy coincidences. And then you have your player taking all these notes going, oh, wait, this and this and this and this. Oh my God, this is genius. Is this going to be the end? And sometimes as a DM, the best thing to do is put yourself in a situation where you can actually hear what your players are saying. And then even if you behind your DM screen look and you have nothing even remotely as comparable, as detailed, as amazingly fit of a jigsaw puzzle piece, you may not have that, but here's your player and they have dangled this and said, oh my God, is this it? Is this it? You then have a choice as a DM to be the storyteller. You can either choose to try to convince your players and be an actor yourself and go, yes, this was always the plan, and help lead your players into having an amazing storyline. Did you plan all of this? No. But the point of the entire exercise is you and your players to create an amazing experience and an amazing story, regardless of who came up with the plot, who came up with all of the answers. All that matters is that you, the storyteller, and the players experience this fun balance where everyone wins. And I think with a showrunner, this isn't a D&D game, and I think a lot of our fans of the show, we are looking and we're trying to get the Duffer Brothers to be on our side, like they're the DM, and they're wanting us and them to have this complete total experience of like they would never do this to us. And like, and I'm not saying that their intentions are evil or in any way that they don't care about their fans, but they got a lot of other motivations. Then you gotta, you got money involved in this. Definitely I think the ending implies that they're wanting to do some extra spin-offs that have nothing to do with what they've done. So they're kind of wanting to, again, reshape, retell, and just spin the direction of a storyline in a different way. They want to keep getting a paycheck. They want to keep doing this, but they knew the story with all the kids. All the kids had grown up. They had grown up long before they had grown up. And really, the show needed to be done 5 years ago. They needed to do 4 or 5 seasons over 5 to 6 years, not 5 seasons over 10 years. Too much time elapsed. These children did not end as children. And this story, this ever-loving story that we fell in love with, was always meant, should have always stayed children on the cusp of becoming adult. You got to think when all of these actors were being scheduled, if you did 5 seasons or 4 over the course of 5 years, you could have started with 10-year-old, 11-year-old. Of course, you get like maybe a little bit older actors, but you make them 11-year-old characters, and then you have the show end with them being around 15. Or at least have, after 5 years, you have these older characters at least pretending that only maybe 3 years has passed at the most, 3 or 4, so that they started at 11 and they end maybe only at like 14, 15, 16. And then you don't have the actors that really much older. 10 years, is such a big gap. These children grew up, but yet we're still showing them as children, and it's just wrong. And I really think one of the biggest problems the Duffer Brothers had was they were trying to do storyline, but I think the whole time in the back of their mind they kept going, we got to change stuff. This can't work because they're too old now. They're too old. We got to change stuff. And I think the original core story was ruined because they were so focused on trying to justify why these grown-ass adults are still playing children. And I think they missed the whole original love of the show. I think it became a burden trying to justify how these children are not children anymore, when really, if they could have just not been stuck in a developmental hellhole, if we wouldn't have had writer strikes, if we wouldn't have had COVID, if we could have actually just had the seasons back to back with breaks, I think they could have actually been able to tell the story different. It maybe kept it exactly the way it was, but without all of these juxtaposed plot holes where they could have told a cohesive story that had less time to grow out of what they were.